The observatory perched on the mountainside offered Vaxa the perfect refuge. Humans rarely ventured to this remote location after midnight, giving her precious hours to study the skies without fear of discovery. Her purple skin, while unusual by Earth standards, wasn't her greatest concern. It was the intricate pattern of silvery markings that traced across her shoulders, down her spine and along her limbs that she kept hidden at all costs. On her homeworld of Alluvian, these birthmarks were considered abominations, signs of genetic impurity that had led to her exile. The elders called them veins of discord, claiming they disrupted the collective harmony. In reality, Vaxa knew they were simply afraid of difference. She adjusted the long-sleeved black garment that covered her from neck to ankle, ensuring not even a glimpse of her markings showed. The fabric was specially designed to suppress their subtle glow, which intensified with her emotions. Tonight, as she had for the past 3 lunar cycles, she would observe the stars and search for signals from distant systems, hoping to find evidence of others like herself. The door to the observatory creaked open. Vaxa froze, her heart thundering against her ribcage. No one was scheduled tonight. She quickly gathered her notes and slipped behind the massive telescope mount, her long, dark, wavy hair falling forward to shield her face. "Hello? Is someone there?" A male voice echoed through the dome. She remained silent, calculating the distance to the exit. If she moved quickly enough, "I can see your shadow," the voice continued, gentler now. "I'm Dominic Reeves, the new research assistant. I didn't think anyone would be here at this hour." Vaxa weighed her options. Running would draw attention. Perhaps if she maintained the darkness and kept her distance. "I'm just a visiting researcher," she called out, her voice carefully modulated to sound more human. "I have permission to use the equipment." The man, Dominic, stepped further into the observatory, and the moonlight through the dome illuminated him. He was tall with broad shoulders, dark curly hair framing a face with kind eyes and a curious expression. He wore a rumpled shirt with equations scribbled across the pocket. "At 3 in the morning?" he asked, but his tone held amusement rather than suspicion. "The best observations happen when others are sleeping," she replied, slowly emerging but keeping to the shadows. His eyes narrowed, trying to make out her features in the darkness. "You're not from the university, are you?" "No," she admitted. "I'm independent." He set down his bag and approached the computer terminal, seemingly unconcerned. "Well, the universe doesn't belong to institutions. I'm tracking the anomaly in the Cetus constellation." "You?" The casual acceptance caught her off guard. Most humans questioned, demanded identification, exerted authority. This one simply accepted her presence and moved on to the science. "Frequency variations from HD 29458, she said, testing his knowledge. His eyes lit up. "The exoplanet with the unexpected radio bursts? That's fascinating work." For 2 hours they worked in tandem, Dominic respecting her need for space and darkness. He was brilliant, catching things in the data she'd missed, offering insights without condescension. When dawn threatened, Vaxa gathered her materials. "Will you be back tomorrow night?" Dominic asked, still focused on his screen. She hesitated. "Perhaps. I'll bring coffee," he said, "and I won't turn on more lights if that helps." Vaxa felt a flutter of something unfamiliar, not fear, but perhaps its opposite. That would be acceptable. As she slipped out into the fading night, she realized her markings had begun to glow beneath her protective clothing, not with shame or fear, but with something dangerously close to hope. For 3 weeks, Vaxa and Dominic settled into an unexpected routine. She would arrive after midnight and he would already be there with 2 cups of coffee, one black, one with an absurd amount of sugar and cream that she had grudgingly admitted to preferring. They worked mostly in silence, but it was a comfortable one, punctuated by discussions of stellar phenomena and theoretical physics. Dominic never pressed about her unusual appearance. In the dim light of the observatory, her purple skin could pass for an olive complexion, and she was careful to keep her specialized garments covering every inch of her markings. Still, she caught him studying her sometimes, his gaze curious but not intrusive. "You know," he said one night as they analyzed a particularly puzzling data set, "I've never met anyone who understands celestial mechanics like you do." Vaxa kept her eyes on the screen. "My people have a different relationship with space than humans." "Your people?" He raised an eyebrow but smiled. "From what exotic locale do you hail, mysterious colleague?" She tensed, realizing her slip. It's just an expression. My family. We've always been astronomers. Dominic nodded, accepting the explanation too easily. She wondered if he was simply being polite or if he suspected more than he let on. As October brought colder nights, Vyaxa found herself lingering longer in the observatory. She told herself it was the deteriorating weather making her reluctant to return to her small hidden dwelling in the forest, not Dominic's company. One night, while calibrating the telescope, their hands brushed briefly. Vyaxa jerked away, not from discomfort but because of the sudden flare of her markings beneath her clothing. The silvery patterns had responded to his touch, glowing brighter than they had in years. Sorry, Dominic said, misinterpreting her reaction. Cold hands. It's fine, she managed, turning away to hide the faint glow now visible at her collar. She needed to leave before her control slipped further. Actually, I should go. The readings are complete for tonight. Wait, Dominic called as she gathered her things. There's a meteor shower tomorrow. Best viewing will be from Crescent Ridge, away from the observatory lights. I was planning to go, if you'd like to join me. Vyaxa paused. The invitation felt significant somehow. Outside their sanctuary, in a place where she might be seen more clearly. I don't know, she said hesitantly. Just as colleagues, he added quickly. The atmospheric conditions will be perfect, and I've got access to portable equipment that would give us readings the fixed telescopes can't match. Science. That was safe territory. What time? I'll be there at 11. There's an access road that leads almost to the ridge. Against her better judgment, Vyaxa found herself at Crescent Ridge the following night. Dominic had arrived early, setting up a small camp with a portable telescope, 2 camping chairs, and a thermos of coffee. The night was crisp and clear, perfect for viewing. As they settled in to watch, Dominic spread a thick blanket across their laps against the autumn chill. Tell me about your research, he said, handing her a steaming cup. The real research, not just what you're doing here. Vyaxa considered how much to reveal. I'm looking for evidence of biological adaptations to different star systems, how life might evolve under different radiation conditions. You think we're not alone, he said, not a question but a statement of shared belief. I know we're not, she replied softly, her gaze fixed on the stars above. The first meteor streaked across the sky, and Dominic's face lit with childlike wonder. In that moment, watching his profile against the night sky, Vyaxa felt something shift inside her. This human, with his unguarded enthusiasm and quiet acceptance, had become important to her. As the night progressed and meteors painted the darkness, they moved closer together for warmth. Vyaxa was painfully aware of every point where their bodies nearly touched, of the danger in this growing closeness. You know, Dominic said during a lull in the celestial display, whoever you are, whatever you're hiding, I'm glad you're here. Her markings pulsed beneath her clothing, responding to emotions she couldn't suppress. For the first time in years, Vyaxa wished she could show someone her true self, wished she could believe that her differences might be met with something other than revulsion. Instead, she pulled the blanket higher and whispered, So am I. The night of the solar flare changed everything. Vyaxa had been monitoring the unusual activity on the sun for days, calculating its intensity and trajectory. What she hadn't anticipated was how the heightened radiation would affect her biology, specifically, the luminescent markings she worked so hard to conceal. She felt it beginning halfway through the evening, a tingling warmth, spreading across her skin as her markings responded to the distant storm of particles hurtling toward Earth. The protective fabric of her clothing, designed to suppress their glow, was failing against this unexpected stimulus. Are you all right? Dominic asked, noticing her distress as she crossed her arms tightly across her chest. I need to leave, Vyaxa said, rising abruptly from her chair. The data can wait until tomorrow. Dominic frowned, concern evident in his eyes. There's a geomagnetic storm warning. The mountain roads might not be safe. As if to emphasize his point, the observatory lights flickered, then died completely. Emergency lighting bathed the dome in a soft red glow, casting eerie shadows. Perfect, Vyaxa muttered, panic rising. In the darkness, the silvery glow of her markings would be even more visible if they broke through her clothing's suppression. It's the solar flare, Dominic explained, checking his phone. Power's out across the region. They're advising everyone to stay put until morning. Vaxa backed toward the door. I can't stay. Vaxa, please. It was the first time he'd used her name. She had only shared it a week ago after 2 months of working together. Whatever's wrong, let me help. A sharp pain lanced through her shoulders where her primary markings traced her shoulder blades. She gasped, doubling over. Vaxa! Dominic rushed to her side, placing a hand on her back. The touch sent a surge of energy through her markings, intensifying their glow. A faint silver light began to emanate through her clothing, pulsing in rhythm with her racing heart. Don't touch me, she cried, jerking away. Please, I need darkness. Complete darkness. Understanding flickered in Dominic's eyes. The storage room, no windows, thick walls. Come on. He led her to a small room at the back of the observatory where equipment and supplies were kept. Once inside, he pulled the door closed, plunging them into perfect blackness. In the darkness, Vaxa's breathing gradually steadied. The pain receded, but she could feel her markings still glowing, fighting against the specialized fabric. Thank you, she whispered into the void. What's happening to you? Dominic's voice came from somewhere to her left, gentle with concern. Vaxa leaned against what felt like a cabinet, weighing her options. For months, this human had shown her nothing but respect and kindness. Perhaps it was time to trust, at least partially. The solar radiation, she explained. It's affecting a condition I have. It will pass, but I need to stay out of light until it does. A photosensitive reaction? His scientist's mind was already theorizing. That's why you always work in near darkness. Something like that, she agreed, grateful for the easy explanation. They sat in silence for a while. The darkness a comfort to Vaxa, but surely disorienting for Dominic. Yet he made no move to leave or to turn on a light. I've always loved the dark, he said eventually. Most people fear what they can't see, but I find it peaceful. Equalizing. How so? She asked, genuinely curious about this human perspective. In darkness, we're all the same. No judgment based on appearances, no preconceptions. Just voices in the void, thoughts connecting. His words resonated deeply with Vaxa. On her world, her markings had defined her entirely, erasing all else she might be. What if, she began hesitantly, what if when the lights return you see something about me that changes everything? Like what? His voice had moved closer, though she couldn't see him. Something different, something that might frighten you. Vaxa, he said, her name soft on his lips. I'm an astronomer. I spend my life searching for the unknown, the different, the unexplained. Those things don't frighten me, they fascinate me. As they talked, the pain in her markings subsided, but the glow intensified. In the absolute darkness, she dared to unzip her protective jacket slightly, allowing the confined energy to dissipate. She didn't realize how much light her markings were now emitting until she heard Dominic's soft gasp. A silvery glow illuminated the small space, revealing his awestruck face just feet from hers. The markings on her collarbones and the tops of her shoulders were now clearly visible, pulsing with gentle light, betraying her secret. Your skin, he whispered, eyes wide. It's glowing. Vaxa froze, trapped between flight and surrender. The moment she had feared for months had arrived. Dominic was seeing a glimpse of her true nature. Now you know why I stay in the shadows, she said, her voice barely audible. May I? Dominic's voice faltered, his hand hovering in the space between them, illuminated by the silvery light emanating from Vaxa's exposed skin. May I see more? The question hung in the darkness, weighted with possibility and danger. No one on Earth had seen her markings, not fully, and on her homeworld, they had been cause for exile and shame. You don't understand what you're asking, Vaxa whispered, pressing herself against the wall. Then help me understand. His eyes reflected the light of her markings, holding not disgust, but genuine wonder. Please, Vaxa, trust me. Something in his gaze broke through the fortress of fear she had built around herself. With trembling fingers, she slowly unzipped her protective jacket further, revealing the intricate pattern of luminescent markings that traced her collarbone and spread across her chest, stopping just above the simple black garment she wore underneath. The silver light brightened, casting dramatic shadows across Dominic's face as he stared, transfixed. They're beautiful, he breathed, leaning closer. Like constellations. Vaxa swallowed hard. They're called veins of discord among my people. A genetic anomaly that marks me as flawed. Your people? Dominic's eyes widened with realization. You're not from Earth, she gave a small, bitter laugh. Was it the purple skin or the glowing markings that gave it away? Instead of the fear or revulsion she expected, Dominic's face broke into a smile of pure amazement. I knew there was something extraordinary about you. From the first night, your knowledge of stellar phenomena was too intuitive, too precise. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she remained still, his fingertips lightly traced the edge of a marking near her shoulder. The touch sent a wave of warmth through her body, and the markings pulsed brighter in response. They react to emotions, she explained softly, and to touch. Does it hurt? He asked, immediately concerned. No, she admitted, not anymore. It's pleasant. The confession hung between them, intimate and vulnerable. Dominic's hand moved to cup her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her purple skin. Will you show me all of them? He asked, his voice husky with emotion. I want to see you, Vexa, the real you. For a moment she hesitated on the precipice of complete revelation. Then with a deep breath she made her decision. Help me, she whispered, turning so he could slide the protective jacket from her shoulders. As the fabric fell away, more of her markings were revealed, intricate patterns flowing down her arms like luminous rivers, connecting at her spine and cascading down her back. She wore a simple black sleeveless top underneath that left her arms and shoulders bare. Dominic circled her slowly, his breath audible in the quiet room. They're like star maps, he murmured, or ancient writing. Each pattern represents a different aspect of my genetic heritage, she explained, finding unexpected relief in finally sharing her truth. The brightness indicates emotional and physical states. They're essentially my biology made visible. And this is why they rejected you? Because you're living art? The indignation in his voice warmed something deep inside her. My kind values uniformity. These markings represent unpredictable genetic expressions. They feared what they couldn't control. Dominic's fingers traced a particularly intricate pattern on her forearm, and Vexa couldn't suppress a small gasp as the marking flared brilliantly at his touch. Sorry, he said, pulling back immediately. No. She caught his hand, placing it back on her skin. It feels right. No one has ever touched them willingly before. His eyes darkened with emotion. Then they never saw how magnificent you are. The words penetrated years of shame and isolation. Vexa felt tears forming, and as they slid down her cheeks, her markings responded, shifting from silver to a soft, pulsing blue. They change colors? Dominic asked, fascinated. With deep emotions, yes, she whispered. Blue is rare for me. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He moved closer, one hand gently cupping the back of her neck where the markings converged in a complex whirl. What does blue mean, Vexa? She met his gaze, vulnerable and honest for the first time since arriving on Earth. Connection, belonging. She paused, gathering courage, desire, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Dominic's thumb traced the edge of a marking that curved along her jaw. All this time you thought these would make me turn away, he said softly, but they're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. His gaze traveled over her face, settling on her lips. Second most beautiful, actually. Vexa's markings pulsed bright blue as Dominic leaned forward, hesitating just before their lips met, giving her a final chance to pull away. Instead, she closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Vexa's markings flared with intensity, bathing them both in ethereal light. For the first time in her life, she felt no shame in their glow, only wonder at how differently they could be perceived through loving eyes. When they finally parted, breathless, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. I've been falling for you since that first night, he confessed. Your mind, your voice, your mysterious ways. But this, he traced a pattern on her shoulder. This is beyond anything I imagined. In the blue glow of her unveiled markings, Vexa saw herself reflected in his eyes, not as broken or flawed, but as something precious and rare, something worth cherishing. Dawn crept through the observatory dome, painting the interior with soft golden light. Vexa and Dominic sat side by side on the floor of the storage room, their backs against the wall, fingers intertwined. Her markings had settled into a gentle silver glow, occasionally pulsing with hints of blue whenever Dominic's thumb traced circles on her palm. The power's back, Dominic noted, nodding toward the digital display on the equipment that had flickered to life. Solar flare must have passed. Vaxa nodded, suddenly aware of her vulnerability in the growing light. For hours they had talked. She had told him everything about Alluvian, her exile, her 3 years hiding on Earth. He had listened with rapt attention, asking questions that showed genuine understanding rather than merely scientific curiosity. "What happens now?" she asked softly, voicing the fear that had been building as night gave way to morning. In darkness, revelations were easier, but daylight demanded decisions. Dominic turned to face her, his expression serious. "Whatever you want to happen, nothing has to change unless you want it to." But everything had already changed. For the first time since her arrival on Earth, someone knew her completely and hadn't turned away. "I've spent so long hiding," she said, looking down at her markings. In the morning light, they seemed less otherworldly, simply a beautiful part of her anatomy. "I'm not sure I remember how to live any other way." "Then we take it slowly," Dominic said. He reached out, gently tucking a strand of her dark, wavy hair behind her ear, one day at a time. The weeks that followed unfolded like a rebirth. Dominic helped Vaxa modify her protective clothing, creating panels that could be opened or closed depending on her comfort level, giving her control over when and how to reveal her markings. Together they found ways for her to venture out during daylight hours. Wide-brimmed hats, strategic scarves, and a confidence that grew with each excursion. On a crisp November evening, Dominic took her to his home for the first time, a small cabin on the edge of the forest far from prying eyes. He had prepared dinner, setting the table with candles that cast a warm glow similar to the soft illumination of her markings. "I have something for you," he said after they had eaten, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a small velvet pouch. Vaxa took it curiously, emptying the contents into her palm. A delicate silver chain held a pendant crafted from what appeared to be meteor stone, inlaid with tiny luminescent crystals in a pattern that unmistakably mirrored her own primary marking, the one that traced her spine. "How did you—" she began, tracing the pattern with her fingertip. "I've been studying you," he admitted with a smile. "Not just your markings, but what they mean to you. This is your heritage mark, isn't it? The one that connects you to your ancestors?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded. On Alluvian, this particular marking had been considered her greatest flaw, the one that most visibly deviated from the accepted patterns. "I thought," Dominic continued, taking the necklace and moving behind her to fasten it around her neck, "that you might like to carry this part of yourself proudly, even when the rest needs to remain hidden." The pendant rested just below her collarbone, warm against her skin. Her markings responded, glowing more intensely where the necklace touched. "It's perfect," she whispered, turning to face him. Later, as moonlight filtered through the bedroom window, Vaxa made a decision. Standing before Dominic, she slowly removed her modified protective clothing, until she stood only in the simple undergarments she wore beneath. For the first time, all her markings were visible, the intricate patterns that flowed across her purple skin like celestial maps, connecting and diverging in complex symmetry. In the past, she had been taught to see these markings as flaws, disruptions in what should have been smooth, unmarked skin. But as Dominic's gaze traveled over her body with reverence, she began to see them through his eyes, as constellations of beauty. "Unique and precious, you're extraordinary," he breathed, approaching her slowly. "Every part of you." His touch awakened her markings, sending pulses of blue light cascading across her skin. As they moved together in the darkness, Vaxa surrendered to the joy of being fully seen and accepted. The markings that had once been her shame now became a conduit for connection, glowing with an intensity that transformed the room into a private cosmos. In the quiet aftermath, as they lay entwined, Dominic traced the central marking that ran down her spine. "On Earth," he murmured, "there's a belief that the universe leaves its mark on everything it creates, that we're all made of stardust, just arranged in different patterns." Vaxa turned to face him, her markings still pulsing softly. "On Alluvian, they say those with veins of discord carry too much of the void within them. But perhaps they were wrong. Perhaps what I carry is simply more of the stars. I think," Dominic said, pressing a kiss to a marking above her heart, "that whatever these are, they led you across the galaxy to exactly where you were meant to be." 6 months later, Vaxa stood on the observatory deck, the night air cool against her exposed skin. She wore a dress of Dominic's design, elegant fabric strategically placed to cover what needed covering, but with cutouts that allowed her markings to shine through. Below, a small gathering of Dominic's most trusted colleagues had assembled for what they believed was simply an engagement celebration. "Ready?" Dominic asked, taking her hand. His eyes held the same wonder they had shown that first night he'd seen her markings. Vaxa nodded, feeling a certainty that had been foreign to her for most of her life. "I'm ready." Together they descended to join the party. Conversation stuttered momentarily as people noticed her unusual appearance. The purple skin they had attributed to a rare condition, now complemented by the visible glow of her markings through the strategic openings in her dress. There were gasps, wide eyes, a few steps backward. But then Elena, Dominic's mentor and the observatory director, approached with fascination rather than fear. "Remarkable," she said, examining the patterns with scientific interest. "Bioluminescence?" "Something like that," Vaxa replied, exchanging a knowing look with Dominic. As the evening progressed, Vaxa found herself surrounded not by horror or rejection, but by curiosity and acceptance. These humans, scientists, dreamers, seekers of knowledge, saw her differences as fascinating rather than frightening. Later, as they stood beneath the stars, Dominic wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "See? Not everyone fears what they don't understand." "Perhaps I needed to stop fearing at first," she replied, watching her markings pulse contentedly against her skin, no longer hidden or suppressed. The marks that had once caused her exile had led her to a new home, one where difference was not merely tolerated but celebrated. In finding acceptance from Dominic, she had learned to accept herself. In being fully seen, she had discovered how to truly live. As they gazed up at the stars that had guided her journey, Vaxa's markings glowed with a brilliant, joyful blue, no longer veins of discord, but pathways of light connecting her past to her future, her alienness to her humanity, and her once broken heart to the love that had healed it. In the end, what she had hidden in shame had become her greatest gift, a visible reminder that even across the vastness of space, connection was possible, and that true belonging came not from conformity, but from the courage to reveal one's most authentic self.